why don't you tell us what DIBCAC is?
All right. So DIBCAC, another of these long
Besides
acronyms.
liability.
So we went CAICO to DIBCAC, right? So DIBCAC is a element within DCMA, Defense Contract Management Agency. DIBCAC is the Defense Industrial Base Cyber Assessment Center? I probably missed that test question. I think it's center. Yeah. Defense Industrial Base Cyber Assessment Center. Effectively a team under DCMA who's responsible for contract enforcement that is specifically focused on evaluating contractor compliance with NIST SP 800-171 and the overall language of DFARS 7012, the contract clause that specifies you need to implement 800-171 if you have CUI from the DoD. So DIBCAC are the folks that are running direct assessments from the DoD directly. The reason why the DoD decided to move to a program like CMMC was specifically to scale their assessment capability, because they've said this many, many times over many, many years, they can't find enough people and pay people enough to organically scale their assessment capability. So they have to come up with another solution. And that's basically how we got to CMMC, is effectively having third-party private organizations assess on behalf of the DoD through this rigorous training and certification and accreditation program, right? So just sort of another illustration of the point that all of the requirements are external to the DoD needing to stand up this program to bolster their organic assessment capability. Now, people are probably most familiar with DIBCAC because of something known as the DoD Assessment Methodology, another acronym, the DODAM, right? And so when the interim rule came out in 2020, that was the one that got everybody's attention. It effectively did two things. It created two assessment mechanisms. It created the DODAM, the DoD Assessment Methodology, and it created CMMC, the CMMC assessment methodology. Same requirements, two different forms of assessment, one organic to the DoD, one external to the DoD. Within the DODAM assessment, this would be things like the DFARS 7019 clause and the DFARS 7020 clause. This is the one that says you have to do your self-assessment, do your goofy little calculations, and upload your score to SPRS, right? So
another
your SPRS
acronym.
score,
We're just
another one, today. Yeah, another acronym. But all of that scoring, SPRS, all of that stuff, that's on the DIBCAC DODAM side of the 2020 rule. All of the level 1, 2, 3, CMMC, A, B, C, D stuff is on the CMMC side of the 2020 rule. Both setups still assessing 800-171 requirements, FAR basic requirements, all that stuff. So two different programs, same, sort of universal set of requirements underneath of them. So in the lead up to CMMC, DIBCAC has been basically going through this process of low, medium, and high assessments.
Those are the three levels of the assessments.
That's right. Yeah. So under the DoD assessment methodology, 3 levels of assessment: low, medium, and high. Low being your self-assessment. You calculate the score. You upload the score to SPRS. The medium assessment being DIBCAC gives you a phone call and you send them your SSP, your system security plan, that documents how you have implemented everything and gives you the basis for calculating your score. And then they upload the score that they think with a medium level of confidence, because they're not actually there to figure out if it's true. They're just reading what's in your SSP.
Right.
The DIBCAC high assessment being they actually show up and do an on-site assessment. So low, medium, high under the DoD assessment methodology, driven by DIBCAC, 1/2 of the 2020 interim rule.
All right. And then so part of Nick's presentation during the town hall, we started to dig into some numbers that were associated with these particular assessments that they found in a sample size, right? And so for me to get it straight before we dig into those numbers, just to break it down just a little bit, is the DIBCAC low assessments are what you as an organization think your implementation of the NIST 800-171 standard is, right? And then
a low assessment is your self-assessment.
Correct. And then the medium is where they come in, and instead of you saying that we're doing this, you're showing them on paper basically how you're doing this, and they're like, yeah, we agree, based on the way that you represent it on paper, correct?
Yeah, basically, they're not even coming in. You're literally just sending them or somehow showing them your SSP.
Email on Monday, SSP by Friday.
Exactly. They call you on Monday. They go, hey, we see that you have a score uploaded in SPRS. Good job. Please send us your documentation that backs up what the basis for that number is. And then they'll review it and they'll enter a score with their medium confidence. If they want a high confidence score, they have to show up under a high assessment and conduct an actual on-site, in-person, assessment of your control environment.
And that would be essentially the only point in time where you're actually told that you have to prove it, physically prove it, or demonstrate at some point in time by DIBCAC, right?
So, well, here's the thing, right? It's 800-171 requirements. And the only way to verify officially, right? The only way to verify whether those requirements have been implemented is by following the procedures in 800-171A. So in theory, if you were to conduct a self-assessment, if DIBCAC were to conduct an assessment of your documentation, if DIBCAC were to conduct an in-person high confidence assessment, the exact same questions are going to be asked in all three assessment levels, right? All of the 320 questions in 800-171A. Now, as we'll see when we get into the numbers, most people don't do that, right? And as a result, most people dramatically overinflate their SPRS score because they give themselves credit for requirements when they haven't gone through the full verification procedure, and you only get the points, right? The 1 point, 3 point, 5 point per requirement. That's a DoD assessment methodology thing. You only get those points for a control that's fully implemented. A control is only fully implemented if you've met all of the steps of its corresponding verification procedure, which means if you didn't use 171A, which most people don't, then you probably got your score wrong. And when DIBCAC shows up to do a medium or a high, they're probably going to find a discrepancy between what they calculate your score to be and what you calculated your score to be.
Which is exactly what happened when.
Right.
So Nick joins, and Nick has this conversation, and we start getting slide after slide after slide after slide. That was almost like a massacre parade, right? That's basically saying that that's what it was. It was death to self-assessment, right? Or self-attestation. And the reason being is because what was noticed is that, so what they did is we were given results from a sample size of DIBCAC assessments. And the sample size was between March of 21 and July of 22, if I'm not mistaken. And they took basically the sample of all medium assessments that were conducted then and compared
medium assessments being documentation review.
Correct.
Right.
So saying with that being said, what was noticed are some of the things that majorly stand out to me, right? First and foremost, 156 different instances where the score that was represented or what the organization thought of their own cybersecurity posture compared to NIST 800-171 dropped by at least 100 points or more, right? So,
oh man,
that's like,
oh man,
all right, so. Tell me that this isn't going as you wanted it to go without telling me that this isn't going according to plan. This is the thing,
right? Is there's clearly a problem underlying that gap in the numbers, because if you calculated your score by 171A and you have the evidence for which you based those determinations on, right, whether it's implemented or not, what you used to calculate your score is what you would provide to DIBCAC, right? Whether it's a medium or whether they show up in person. That means that people aren't calculating their score correctly, right? Which is, we well know, the main reason they're not doing that is because they don't understand the relationship between 171 and 171A or how to use the procedures in 171A. I mean, to this day, years into this process, it is still a revelation to most people that 171A even exists.